Hello, everybody. It's Kateri,
Hey, it's Owen and Kylock.
and welcome to the Soothsayer's Tea, the feature episode. Today,
Feature.
we're feature, and I actually said it right this time. I listened to the recording. I kept saying feature, and I'm like, "What is wrong with me?"
Oh my
I'm going
god.
to set the expectation for any of our listeners. I got Invisalign a few years ago, and am still not used to my teeth. So, yes, I'm going to have a lisp. Deal with it.
Yeah, I just can't speak. I
Yeah,
just can't speak my first language.
just it's fine. Tongues are overrated. So
Yeah,
today we're going to be discussing an inspiration from the Empress card from the tarot would be the uprise of goddess worship, and everything of the such.
yeah. So, let's get started, I think.
Let's get right into it.
The first thing that I want to talk about, and if any of you know me or have spoken to me before about this, or have seen me scream and rave and rant on Twitter about this, you will know how I feel going in. And I would like to talk about the Maiden Mother Crone archetype.
Hmm.
And probably not in a very positive way. um, the way that I see it and the way that I've experienced it, the Maiden Mother Crone archetype is valid in a neo-pagan sort of sense of the word. If you want to recreate a deity and remove all of their cultural context, history, and the thoughts and feelings that the people who this goddess sort of belongs to um feel about it, you can go ahead and worship your maiden mother crone. Um that's very harsh.
Yes.
But I think you know what I'm saying. Listen, if you worship a deity in the context of Maiden Mother Crone, nothing I say is going to invalidate your practice.
Yep.
So this is just basically my opinion and my experience. Um, but in my opinion and in my experience, I see this sort of archetype forced onto deities always, mm, in my experience, always, yeah.
Yeah.
Female deities or femme deities who may also be associated with the concept of the triple goddess. And I have a lot to say on this, so I'm going to let you start talking about Hagate and her triple goddessness.
Ness. All the arms and all the legs and all the heads. So the thing
Mm-hmm.
is that, like you said, when it comes to the maiden runner crown, because we're starting right into this when it comes to a concept of us being more experienced practitioners. Like Owen said, if this works for you, it works for you by all means, right? We're approaching this from not as necessarily authorities, but just like this is what our experiences have been.
I'm approaching this as an authority,
Well,
100%.
never mind. Owen knows everything. Um, I'm not going to approach it as an authority by any means. Um, and we'll talk about Hakata here in a moment, but I think, and we're going to talk about Wicca here very shortly. But the Maiden Mother Crone has really kind of taken off within neo-pagan circles, specifically in later form Wicca, especially in like in the 70s and 80s. That's really where it kind of stepped off because this whole like goddess worship. Um, I wouldn't say that it's a more recent thing, but the prevalence of it, the again girl boss kind of attitude when it comes to spirituality, is definitely more of a modern take, I would think. And kind of segueing into that is that I see it a lot when we have goddesses that are have so much history behind them. Like we're talking ancient history. You can find academic studies kind of being pigeonholed into this archetype. And I see it a lot with Hecate, which is my patron deity, which is interesting because she isn't. She has some mother aspects to it, but she is a virgin goddess. She's more of a caretaker of children just because of their liminality between life and death. Because Hecate has three forms, but she's not a triple goddess. She doesn't have three different names. It's just one entity with three forms, often with their backs to each other because, and in ancient Greek, which was her basically her very extremely basically her patron area, or where she kind of came into power, is that she was used as a protection deity for crossroads. So the reason why she has three forms is that so she can watch all ends of the crossroad, not because she's, you know, like hot thing, hot mama, and like grandmother. It was not quite like that. And I'm seeing that kind of a lot where there's a lot of just kind of weird synchronism, and I don't know exactly where it's coming from. And I think it's almost like a, I don't want to say ignorance, but I think that some people approach goddess worship one particular way and they kind of have a tendency to synchronize just because they're seeing some sort of parallels, but parallels don't mean that they're identical in any way, shape, or form. And I think those the reason why they're searching out these parallels is because they're just trying to find that goddess type archetype to follow, and they want to have everything as a goddess, and they want to have everything as something that they can attach to and almost work towards, almost like how the Christians want to be like Jesus. There's a lot of people who want to be like these goddesses or what their idea of a goddess is, and it always comes into the maiden mother crone archetype, which is always awkward.
Yeah. My basically my entire take on this is the way that I okay, so for context, I am an Irish person. Both my parents are Irish. I was born in Ireland, raised in Ireland, etc. Um, and this is sort of like my culture and my history and everything. This is all a very integral part of me, and it's something I care very deeply about. And what I see a lot, with specifically with Bridget and Namarigna or the Morrigan, um, is people will see that they are a sort of triple goddess, which isn't even really necessarily true, especially in the case of Namarigna, when that title, because it's not a name, it's a title, and it can mean like the Great Queen, the fan, or like the Phantom Queen is sort of a less popular translation, but it encompasses more than three deities. Namarigna is it's sort of like an archetype that or an epithet basically. It's a title that different deities would fit into, and that would be sort of Baive, Macha, Nevin, even like Queen Maeve even of Connacht. Um Queen Maeve of Connacht? Whatever, you know who I'm talking about. Um
You know that bitch.
they yeah, that bitch, even or as I like to refer to that bitch of the river. Bone of the River Boyne because Bowen because I forgot her name. Essentially, she also fits into the title or the epithet of Namarigna, and it's the same with Bridget. Bridget, or Breed is an epithet. It's a title of. So this is sort of more controversial. This is more of a modern interpretation of Bridget. Not, and by modern I mean like the last 200 years. Personally, I could 100% be wrong on this, but in my research, I haven't found any ancient sources that say that Bridget is three sisters with the same name, one of who's the goddess of poetry, one of smithcraft, one of um healing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um that I believe was sort of brought about in the 1800s by someone called John, whose second name has escaped me, and whose first name has also possibly escaped me. If you are looking for a good book on this, um, Bridget by Courtney Weber, yeah, that's their name. Um, any of the works, or also the Morrigan by Courtney Weber, any of the works by Morgan Daimler, they are a very well researched scholar and one of the only I think one of the only, definitely one of my favorite, personally, translators of Old Irish into Modern Irish. And they've actually, I think they've written a sort of a compendium, called Irish Gods and Goddesses. It has a load of explanations in there that you will all love. But this is off topic. Basically, healing, smithcraft, poetry. That does not mean maiden mother crone. um,
No.
there are aspects, I guess, sort of the within healing and nurturing in Bridget, and there are with especially with Saint Bridget and the syncretism between the two. There are healing wells all over Ireland called like Bridget's Wells. and that I guess can sort of be put into the mother category, but and then of course the maiden category when she was younger. But the thing is, these are colonial concepts. Like we didn't come up with this ourselves. We already had categories that they fit into, and they were working perfectly fine before someone from outside came and labeled them maiden, mother, crone. I really personally don't agree with this when it comes to Irish deities, at least those two, in quotation marks specifically. Um, but listen, if you are a solitary Wiccan or a neo pagan, and this is how you see them, I mean, I guess that's your prerogative. I strongly disagree with you, and I really think you need to look into the history and the politics of Ireland and sort of research our culture a little bit more, and you will, in my opinion, get a much more well-rounded and more satisfying practice from it. But, you know,
Yeah.
that's your prerogative.
And I think the biggest problem, the real needle in the ass when it comes to all this, is that the Maiden Mother Crone kind of comes from a almost like a retelling of a level of history that has nothing to do with a lot of goddesses in general. It is kind of a deity archetype that really kind of came into kind of like it started really deeply with Wicca. And the thing is that from what I understand is that like the main mother crone was a pretty heavy subject of a poet from the middle 20th century, Robert Graves. He kind of just wrote poetry, and that's where it kind of came into kind of being to a certain extent. And there is like there's like a level of like some history there, but it's nowhere near Irish. It's nowhere near um, like a lot of the archetypes that you kind of see because there is triple, I say goddesses, or at least like deities to a certain extent. We see like the graces or the charities. We have the Morai, we have the Norn within the Norse mythology, and again, the Morai is within Hellenistic or Greek. So it comes into like from what I understand, even Hera was kind of worshipped as like a girl growing up in a widow. So there's already history there. So to kind of apply that to any goddess that you come across, or any specifically even triple goddesses, because going back to Hecate there for a moment, is that um, Robert Graves basically said that Hecate was like the original triple goddess. And it's like, but no, because she just governs all three rounds, but it wasn't again like hot chick, mommy, and grandmommy. It didn't work that way.
Mommy.
Mommy, right? It wasn't that because the thing is that it's not just mother, maiden, crone. It's not just like a woman through different stages of her life. It's like those are specific kind of roles that they're putting on that. And when it comes to Hecate, is that she never really had those types of roles per se. There is a lot of three surrounding her. Threes are very important, but that has more or less to do with the crossroads, which is witchcraft. Like, and that's less to do with her state of her fertility or lack thereof.
hmm Yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of interesting that you bring up Robert Graves because I do want to touch on him a little bit later because he wrote the White Goddess, I believe it's called,
Yeah,
which was also a foundational book for um one form of Dianic Wicca, which I also want to talk about. But the Maiden Mother Crone concept as well, it's the way that it's sort of portrayed is very much the life cycle of a woman. And I'm not a woman.
yeah,
But I also really don't personally agree with it because not all women fit into those three categories. That is
yeah.
not the state of their like entire lives. And especially in like the modern age, I really think it doesn't align with the values of women today.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you can see inspiration in these things. There's nothing wrong with that, especially when it comes to ageism nowadays. Like, you see it in Hollywood, you see it everywhere. That once a woman's no longer past her birthing age, then just kind of throw it to the side. So I do understand why people are attracted to this because it does indicate a quote unquote traditional woman. going through her life stages. So I can see the validity of that, but to kind of enforce it on especially goddesses that do not subscribe to it and kind of force it upon it, it's really awkward.
It's gross and it's icky and it makes me upsetty.
Upsetty spaghetti.
Yeah, exactly. It upsetties my spaghetti, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think. Do you have any more to say on the Maiden Mother Crone?
I
I
don't
kind
think
of
so. I think,
I monologued there for a little bit. I think I'm
yeah.
good.
And I think there's going to be people out there that do a lot of goddess worship, because I do really want to touch on like um, the more almost kind of new age version of it, but they're just like, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. And
Hmm.
honestly, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with Maiden Monochrome, because, but I just think that it's almost its own, like, Maiden Mother Coma is almost her own separate entity than anything else. And to try to force out on everything else is kind of awkward and uncomfortable. When I say awkward and uncomfortable, I'm just like, it's almost like kind of like taking something and stuffing it in like a square peg in a square, like in a circle hole. It just doesn't work.
Yeah,
And you don't
exactly.
have
That's
to.
exactly what it's like.
Yeah.
It's when you do that, you remove parts of this deity and you're not giving yourself the full picture and you're really doing yourself a disservice in doing this, in my
Yes.
opinion.
Yeah.
um but yeah, speaking of Robert Graves wrote The White Goddess, which, oh, what was her name? Morgan McFarland, I believe it was,
Hmm.
claims as a foundational text for her version of Dianic Wicca. And Dianic Wicca is a very controversial sect of Wicca that
Yeah.
I personally think is a little bit gross, um, for a couple of reasons. Namely, because Dianic Wicca is it's entirely womb centric and women. I don't. Okay, let me clarify. I don't think this is gross because women are at the center of it. I think it's gross because of the founder of it, Zsuzsanna Budapest, is a turf.
Yeah.
The Morgan McFarland, her like subsect of Dianic Wicca, I believe, does allow men in their churches, but I believe only women can rise within that, and that is perfectly fine. However, this is one thing that I'm unsure about and was not able to find resources on. I'm not sure if that includes trans women, and if it does include trans women, then yeah, that's a much less controversial. I would even say that it is valid form of Wicca. But Zsuzsanna Budapest's original form of Dianic Wicca did not allow men at all, which would also be fine, but also did not allow trans women or non-binary people. And I believe she's actively, like, outrageously a turf, which is just extremely gross, to be quite honest. And for those of you who, I know most of you probably do know, but for those of you who don't, a TERF is a trans exclusionary radical feminist, um, and it's very not feminist at all.
Yeah. And I might be like the crazy one where I'm saying even that is slightly icky to me, because I don't think that when it comes to anything womb centric magic, I don't think
Hmm.
anybody should be excluded from that, including cishet males or people who identify as male, people who are assigned female at birth that transition. I don't think it should be excluded from anybody, because I don't think that's fair. I don't think that there's any quote unquote masculine rights that I should be excluded from just because my genitals,
Hmm.
or even if I had the quote unquote right genitals and identified as a woman, it doesn't matter to me. But maybe that's a hot take or lukewarm take. I don't care for
Mm.
any type of gender separation in any way, shape, or form, no matter what your gender identity is.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm pretty much in the same boat here. I I'm not fully qualified to speak on this because I am not AFAB and I'm not a woman myself, and I
Yeah.
don't want to step on the toes of those who are, because this is not something that I will have experienced, like sexism in this form. But I believe the original concept was much more innocent and it was about creating a safe space for women.
Yeah.
But a safe space for women is only a safe space for women if it's inclusive of all women.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's again, there's a good argument for that. I'm not denying that, because I think that for us to get to the point that I would like to see it, which is it doesn't matter who you are, right?
Hmm.
I think that there has to be a breaking down of just sexism in it, like in general,
Hmm.
especially when it comes to like toxic masculinity and such. So I think that there's going to be a long ways from that. Probably not in our lifetime, but I think for
Well,
in
I
the
mean,
you never know.
you're getting up there.
Oh, shut up!
Not much else is going to be happening in your lifetime.
I'm already
I still
half
have a good couple
dust.
of years.
But
You have one foot
honestly,
in the
though,
grave and you're walking towards a banana peel, okay?
I know, right? But honestly, when it comes down
Anyway,
to it, is
podcast
that
cancelled
I
again.
know again. But yeah, I think that goddess work can get complicated, especially when it comes to I call it the in the modern girl boss version of goddess work, that
Hmm.
I see that quite often, and it almost kind of really pulls into again that attachment to like everything that is feminine, and that can be almost dangerous because um, it's just weird because depending on your deity and your belief system, because I hear that often like, oh, I feel like a goddess, or I'm a goddess, and blah 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 blah, and I'm just like, are you looking to get smote? Because that's how you get smote.
Oh my god. But yeah, no, I know what you mean. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, because like associating yourself at that level, not that level, I wouldn't say, like just kind of stepping onto that plane, like
Deifying yourself in the
do you
wrong way.
yeah, that's can get dangerous, and it's not that necessarily, I don't want to think that or imply that gods are malicious or anything of the sort, but if a god decided to become a human, somebody's going to stab them just for the sake of making a point, right? And that kind of goes for the same.
Would you care to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, it's like, let's just say somebody like, I don't know. I don't want to name any like God names because again, I don't want to get smoked. But let's just say Jesus.
We can take Jesus. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
Jesus is a pacifist. He's cool. So if
Yeah.
Jesus decided to, well, he was a man, but anyway, if Jesus decided to come down from heaven, right, and there's just like, you know what, I'm one of you now, and I'm going to age like you, and I'm going to be like, I am 100% human, but I used to be a god, right? That's going to get
Hmm.
attention, right? All the other humans around or all the Christians are going to be like, well, that's Jesus. He's kind of cool. And they're all going to follow him and they're all going to be enamored with him. And then somebody who doesn't like Jesus is going to be like, I'm pulling a gat on you because screw you or whatever. It's just like, because that's human nature to be either jealous or hateful or just to kind of like, stir the pot or just to be destructive. Same with gods. If you say, I am this, I'm not going to say it aloud because, again, I do have some Hellenistic properties, but we all know about the goddess Aphrodite and how there's been humans that have been struck down because they said that they were more beautiful than her. Like it's straight up in the myths.
Hmm.
You don't put yourself at that level because at that point you're playing by their games.
Humble yourself.
Yes, and it's not about being humble in the case of, because humble is also a very interesting concept, especially in from what I know in Hellenism. How it's not about being
Hmm.
meek. It's actually about just being very, very honest and clear on your own power. And I mean being honest with yourself, because I know a lot of people out there that are not honest with themselves when it comes to their power. They're arrogant about it. And that comes into if you're working with deities, especially goddesses, and you're posting on your like your Instagrams or your Twitters or your TikToks about like how like fantastic and how you're God spousing and all this other stuff. It's you're gonna have a bad time.
We should do an episode on God spacing.
Absolutely, we will.
Hmm.
But that we're kind of going a little bit off topic here. But what I'm getting at is that it was more of a cultural thing. I'd find we saw it with Adriana Grande, "God is a Woman." We saw it with like,
Adriana Grande.
wow, what did I just say?
You just said Adriana Grande.
Wow, Ariana Grande. Try
There you
that
go.
again. Wow.
There you
Okay,
go,
listen.
Grandma.
I've
Oh my
had
god.
wine. Leave me the hell. We're not talking right now. We're done.
This is
But
just going to be two people monologuing and not acknowledging each other whatsoever from now on. That is the podcast.
that is the podcast. We're not just knocking to each other anymore. But no, going back
Hmm.
to that, even like freaking, there was a um like a razor commercial. I'm your Venus. I'm your goddess. Your desire. It's like relax. And I see that a lot when it comes to just women empowerment. Is like, oh, the goddesses, and they end up really kind of like neutering and neutralizing these very powerful beings. Like um when you have the hippie people who like light their white sage going on about Kali and how she's such a girl boss, it makes me want to just vomit my entire intestinal tract up. It kills me.
Valid reaction.
Like it's actually murdering me.
Yeah,
And it's
I
yeah,
it's
it's a
hurting
lot.
you. Yeah, I know what you mean. But yeah, I mean we see that a lot with the sort of over sexualization of femme deities as well. Like the thing is, people I don't know how we as a society have managed to get like this, but we have because we simultaneously neuter and desexualize femme deities while also over sexualizing them.
Yeah, and it's not just deities, it's just like the femme
It's
experience in
also just
general,
yeah, it's women in general. I
or femme
it's
presenting people. It's
yeah.
like, especially, and this is where the mother maiden crone archetype was kind of like a kind of hit a nerve for us, is because it once you become the quote unquote mother, there's no sexuality anymore. Like at that point, you're the caretaker, you're the mommy,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's so weird to me. And honestly, this is going to
Yeah.
be a bit of
It's
kind of
quite
a
reductive.
it's reductive, and honestly, this is going to be a little bit of a I don't want to say like a, but this is going to be a bit of a risque kind of thought process when you see in pornography, when you see women barely over the age of 24 being MILF, again air quotations, MILF actresses,
Hmm.
and it's just like they're 24, and it's, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, like it's one of those
I
things.
know
It's like
I do.
where a lot of this comes into ageism, and it's very uncomfortable for me. Again, when it comes both to
Yeah.
sexualization and the neutering, either everybody's a mommy or everybody's a mom.
Yeah, it's it's very misogynistic as well. Like it comes entirely from the male perception of like female beauty, which is just so gross. Like why do we as a society why do we as a society keep like sort of sexualizing younger people. Like the further on we get in age, why do we skew younger in terms of attracted like who we are attracted to?
Yeah, and it's interesting because there is goddesses of sex out there,
Oh
and
yeah, they exist.
they're
100%.
and they're almost, I find even they're kind of neutered and desexualized to a certain extent, because like, no, it's about love. I'm like, no, it's about getting on your back with your legs behind your ears. Like that's what it's about too, and I don't think people like to acknowledge that.
That sounds
um
insanely uncomfortable.
it
I feel so sorry for you.
Nobody needs to know, but it comes into, it's like why is that not recognized? Because whenever we see the sexualization of these femme deities, it's always for the sake of the masculine.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's also, I mean, historically, in terms of the concept itself, like it was founded and popularized by a man, Robert Graves.
Yep.
It's not like this is what women want, I guess, TM. I don't know. It's just always sort of rubbed me the wrong way. I see it a lot with the Morgan being portrayed as a sex goddess, and being portrayed as like naked in their statues and stuff when this wasn't really historically a thing. One aspect one, I guess, sister of Namarigna had sex in the mythology like once. It definitely was more than once, but the one that's coming to mind right now is the most popular, and it's with Cuchulainn, I think. But the thing is, having sex one time doesn't make you a sex goddess.
Oh, I know.
um, it just doesn't. And also, what? What? I've had sex. Does that make me a sex goddess?
Yes.
Yes, actually, it does. I think you should all start to venerate me. But that my own personal cult being besides the point. It's insane. It's just it doesn't make sense. Just because someone is femme and having sex and a goddess does not mean that those three things have to like be linked together and related. Because the Morrigan is very much not a sex goddess. She is very much war, death, violence. Yes, there's leadership, love, and sort of um what is it when you rule something? What is the word I'm looking for?
Authority.
Sovereignty.
Sovereignty. There you go.
Yeah, sovereignty. But I mean, sex is not really that one of the things. Fertility, yes, as well. We see with because they've had like children, but just because they've had children doesn't mean they're goddesses of fertility. If you pray to
No,
a goddess of the dead to help you birthed, get baby in, oh my god, to
to
what is
get
it called?
birth,
Get
to get
pregnant.
babied, to
Yeah,
get
to
babied.
get
No, to get
to
babied is
get
the important.
pregnant. Yes, to get babied. I really don't think that is gonna go the way you think it's gonna go. Uh, I don't like that. It's also the same with Bridget being titled as sort of this mother goddess when in the Bahuvrikta, Bridget literally, if I'm remembering correctly, which I'm almost certain I am, gives an abortion.
Oh,
Like
there you
it's
go.
yeah, like that's not motherhood.
You see it with Lilith. People like mommy Lilith. It's just like they're. Oh my gosh! remember seeing somebody saying, "Hey, my friend's having a baby. How can I get Lilith to come in and bless?" And I'm like, "Are you on crack cocaine and meth and all the other drugs? Because are you crazy?" Um,
Hmm.
yeah, like and their argument was is that, well, I saw in a spell work that people would make talismans. I'm like, read it again. Oh, is protection talismans against? I'm like, yeah, against the baby eater.
Yeah. I I actually I do find that quite funny. I'm not going to speak about it because it is very controversial and I'm not super well researched on Lilith. I I'm gonna return very quickly to Bridget and the abortion story because I have just remembered that I remember
Yes.
when the abortion referendum in Ireland was happening. I can't remember what newspaper or like website it was, but the way that they worded it was like Bridget Saint Bridget performs Ireland's first abortion 650 AD. In today's times, she would face up to 14 years in prison.
I love it.
And
Love it.
it was so funny.
Right. And again, I can't comment a whole lot about Lilith, just what little information I know. And again, that comes into trying to change goddesses' aspects to kind of fit your life. Just because,
Mhm.
again, um, goddesses are not celebrities that you can mold your life out of. Like, I do have, again, my one patron deity that I find is a handful enough for myself as is. But there's polythesis out there. There's people out there who have multiple gods because there are many facets themselves. So to kind of force a goddess into its own little thing, and again, I see this a lot with younger practitioners, is that they almost treat deities like their besties, their imaginary best friend. That's just going to say and do what they think is cool or best or makes them feel good about things, and it doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
And
like that time I went to Starbucks with Aphrodite.
yeah, exactly. So and that's
Yeah.
coming into, again, like especially when it comes to quote unquote edgy goddesses, like Kali, Lilith, Hecate. Hecate's she's fucking scary sometimes, guys. Like people need that
Sometimes, in
sometimes.
quotation marks. I'm
Well,
terrified of her.
oh well, there you go. I haven't had a quote unquote bad experience, but I come into that relationship um, both confident and humble, if that makes any sense. I go and I'm like, I'm confident I can handle this, but I'm also
Hmm.
not going to brag about something that I've never done. I'm only coming
Yeah.
here saying these are the skills that I have. Can you assist me? what can I, and also what can I do for you? Like, how can I be
Yeah.
in servitude for you? And how can you be like, it's almost transactional, but it's a very respectful one. But I think a lot of people go in there and be like, how do I, like, text my ex? And then she walks all over you. And it's just, it's not easy. Like when you're
Hmm.
working, especially in my case with the goddess of death and liminal spaces, is that it's constantly shifting, it's constantly moving. And for me, I need that in my life. I need movement. I need constant new things. And it works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. And this both kind of the best kind of way to describe it, this deification of deities is actually not healthy.
I can't wait to tweet that later. The deification of deities is not healthy.
Healthy. But I say that in a way that deification, as in like almost like the suitcase Jesus kind of concept that um Ocean Keltoy brought up.
I think maybe idolization instead of deification
There
might
you
be a
go.
better word.
Idolization, yeah, because idolization is not healthy, especially when it comes to pagan deities, because they're not always easy to work with. It's just reality. And that
Yeah.
comes into almost like one of the kind of points that you wanted to make is like the glamorization of motherhood and just how that kind of permeates into goddess culture.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think very much sort of in modern society,
Yeah.
there's a very big divide between people who want to be mothers and people who don't want to be mothers. Women or people with wombs who don't want to be mothers are often sort of shunned by the general population and like made to feel as if they're like a failure as a woman, which is kind of bullshit to be honest, because it's their body and they can do whatever the fuck they want with it. But the thing is as well, when we talk about motherhood, especially in the context of not wanting to have a baby, we only really talk about the really fluffy parts, the very much the baby's first steps, the baby's first words, the baby's first haircut and stuff like that. All of the really really nice things, and that is 100% a very huge part of having a child, and all of these really great and special moments that you will get to share with your child and whoever you decide to raise your child with. But motherhood and especially giving birth is very very intense, and I have obviously never done it myself, but
You
I
should
have
try.
yeah, I think I should. I think that would be hilarious. But my entire family are made is basically made up of women, and I've grown up around women my entire life. I will never be able to speak for them, but I will be able to share sort of experiences that they have shared with me. And especially in terms of like giving birth, what that does to your body is insane. As well as that, the sort of after effects, like for example, postpartum depression, and the like the mental stress and the physical stress that that puts on your body is huge.
It's
That is not
traumatic.
something to be taken lightly. It is traumatic. It is literally a traumatic experience. You are pushing something huge out your hoo-ha that comes out of your vagina, and that is insane. That like what?
Like you don't
But
even
yeah,
have one and you're already crossing your legs.
I don't have one, and I am literally like about to start tying my legs together and tying like no entry, no exit signs because whoa. Um, yeah, I mean, motherhood is not all. It's not this nice and smooth, amazing, beautiful journey. It is dark, it is dirty, and it is disgusting. Did you know that sometimes, obviously you know, but the listeners may not, when babies shit themselves in their nappies, that shit can go all the way up their back, like into their hair. It is like it is
It's
insane how much
dirty.
a baby shits
It
and where it gets because it gets everywhere. I was changing my little cousin's nappy a lot when I was younger because I used to babysit all the babies because I'm the oldest cousin. And I unbuttoned this bitch's nappy and he pissed on me. He pissed straight into my fucking face.
you're still traumatized by this.
Yes, yes, I am. I have helped raise all of my younger cousins, and I will never go near a baby ever again. If I decide to have a child one day, my husband can take care of that shit. I don't care. I'll take him to the park. I'll take him to get ice cream. I will be good cop, but there is no way another baby is pissing on my face.
wow. Yeah, and just like
Yeah,
I love how you're the whole like this is I just don't want to deal with all this. Like, let's just talk
yeah.
about again just like the womanhood portion of it all. Like the isolation, the feelings of being alone. Like you can be like if anybody's seen mommy groups and just the snake pit that's that and the
Mm-hmm.
judgment and everything of the sort, it's not pretty. And it comes into is like it's not just that, but I think that's just society hates women in general, honestly, and femme
I
people
mean,
is
yeah.
because like when you don't have children, then you're selfish and you're a nurse. I'm very much so on the fence at this point, but that comes into just me being a very indecisive human being. Um,
Nice.
but
Good job.
I know I'm so good at this. I'm so good at living, and that comes into is that because motherhood is not necessarily pretty, that's where the desexualization comes in, right? And we've mentioned
Mhm.
this a few times is the mother whore complex, which I just drives me insane, drives me absolutely bonkers. And if there's any men listening to this, just do better when it
If
comes
there's any
to
men listening to this, shut the up. Wash your ass.
I love how I'm just like, you do better. I know it's just like you can go yourself 8 ways from sideways. It's like, okay. I'm like sitting here aunting up the place, and you're just like, we're gonna fight. We're gonna go back right now. Get off the
Mhm.
ground. I'm gonna kick you
Well,
again.
listen, square up, kid. But I mean, yeah, absolutely. It definitely plays into the like the desexualization of mothers. And I'm not saying that we should like. I feel like a negative sort of result of the sexualization of mothers is sort of the like MILF industry, like you were talking about earlier,
Yeah,
when that is not an accurate representation of what a sexual mother would be. Like I hate to be the person saying this because I obviously will never go through this, but also like women, especially mothers, are going to have stretch marks. They're going to have a little bit of baby fat. They're not going to be perfect fucking porn star models. And it's disgusting and it's unrealistic to expect these people to maintain these unhealthy most of the time and like perfect bodies. And it's just gross. Do
yeah,
better, man.
and
Get
and this
good.
is where I can see the attraction to the maiden mother mother the maiden mother
Mother,
crone mother
maiden mother
mother
crone.
crone the maiden mother crone archetype. I can see that because I think that, and this is not to be like wah wah poor women, because honestly there is people out there that's had it way worse than women. So I don't want to kind of give that impression that we're crying about oh them poor women's, because there is issues with sexism and such, but it can always get much worse, especially we see that towards our non-binary siblings and such. So
Hmm.
there's always basically what we're saying is that men are the enemy,
Yeah,
and there's nothing that can change. I'm joking, but
I'm
it's
not.
but that comes into because of that. So because of some of the traumas that kind of go around the male gaze and treatment of like femme people, is that there is people out there that get really protective in a bad way of this femininity, this woman womb centric thing, is because they really kind of cut out everything. And again, turfy, it becomes very turfy because either
Hmm.
they view people who are trans as, and I do not agree with this, I'm going to say this out loud, but I'm just saying this is not my thought process in any way shape or form, but these turfs, they see either trans women as quote unquote men who are pretending to be women and fetishizing women, or they see non-binary people or gender neutral people or people who are gender fluid as abandoning their gender, which is really fucked up when you think of it. It's really not comfortable um, to kind of experience that, because I don't even know where to even approach that. I just think it's just gross. I think it's just a really gross way to think about it. But on the flip side of the coin, when you do see all the things that happen, I'm just like, this is what they come up with. On the flip side of the coin, I'm like, but I'm like, I need to like, I understand how you got there. I just don't understand why you got there. If
Hmm.
that makes any sense.
Yeah. Why you like this?
Yeah. I'm like, just because you can explain how you got there doesn't mean that it's valid.
Yeah, pretty much. Um, I'd also okay, slightly off topic, but something that I really want to cover.
Mhm.
Um, there is space for people who are not women or who do not identify with the term woman within all of this, all of motherhood, all of this, like this archetype, the maiden mother crone archetype, if that's where you want to be. You do not have to be a woman with a womb. You do not have to be a person with a womb. You don't have to be anyone. You don't need a womb, and you don't need to identify with the term woman. You don't need to be AFAB at all to sort of do this sort of stuff. And to be I've sort of used the word womb too many times now and I've confused myself.
Yes.
um just continue. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I
So I
think,
want you
yeah.
say it.
I think
Yeah.
that for me is that I would love to see it even get to the point that people who identify strongly with masculinity, who are men, to almost kind of want to step into this. Um, Again, I've always said that I'm a cishet woman, but I have no issues stepping into masculine type feelings and masculine type roles. Just because I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks, right? It comes into is that I don't even give a fuck what I think. Honestly, it's just like if I want to do something, I'm going to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that comes into I don't question my gender identity when I do these things. I just do it because I want to, and I think that even comes into if we step outside magic for a moment, or craft, or religion. If you see a dude who wants to paint his nails, have at her, have fun, right? Like there should be no, and
My
this
nails
shouldn't
are
have to
painted
be
right now.
right, and it shouldn't even have to be like a question if like, oh, is he like, like, is he a little limp in the
Is
wrist
he,
or something? Yeah, is he,
you know?
right? It shouldn't even be a question of that. It's just like, oh, dude, nice nails. Cool. Do they have like tractors or something on them? Cool. Like, it just should be,
Oh my
I don't know.
god.
But like, there's nothing, I don't think that there's anything wrong with stepping into both sides of the divine gender in general. I think that
Hmm.
people get way too worked up about over analyzing gender to the point it's just like, why don't you just do what you want?
Hmm.
Just do what you want. Because I don't overanalyze gender personally. I just don't care enough. I just do what I want, and I want people to do what they want. That's not excluding anybody because I don't think that's fair to anybody at all.
Hmm. And I think with that, we've covered everything we wanted to cover.
I think so. This has been an interesting one. And with that being
This
said, I
this
just
one's
want
been rough.
it's been rough. With this being said, I do want to specify that in my case, again, I'm a cishet woman. I'm not an expert on any of this. If there's anything that I have said that is like not correct, feel free to correct me by any means. I don't mean any harm or anything of the sort. I hope that I am being very inclusive and understanding of people with all of this because again, what I understand that works for me might not work for you, and that's okay because that is what make people individuals. And I hope that again,
Hmm.
just hope everybody knows I just love everybody except for Jim. Jim, go f yourself.
Listen, okay, I am in a semi-unique situation because I am not a woman. I'm not AFAB. I'm a non-binary person, and I present for the most part masculine. But I was raised in a very, very womanly way, I guess, if that makes sense, because the only really like people in my life were women. And I don't know, man. I'm not a woman myself, and I have exper I've basically grown up listening to the stories of women and their own experiences with sexism and men and misogyny, and s- but that does not mean that I experienced it myself. And so if anyone felt that I misrepresented them or that I was wrong or misogynistic myself, I am 100% open to being corrected on that. And please do, honestly, because I just want to learn and be a good ally.
Yeah.
So, at me on Twitter. If it's on Twitter, then you know it's me.
Yeah, like, I don't want anybody to feel like they have to be, angry with us, if there's something that we've said that has, upset anybody or made somebody uncomfortable, please let us
Yeah,
know, or we're here
because
to, listen.
this was a very, I guess, I guess political is not really the right word, but we discussed a lot of heavy topics here today, um, and we're both human and not perfect.
Yeah, and I
So
think it comes down to is that my personal experience with gender doesn't I don't want that to invalidate anybody else's experience with their gender. Just because that's not what I subscribe to myself does not mean that I necessarily believe that what you subscribe to is invalid. I think everybody's valid to a certain extent.
yeah, and with that, I've been on Kylock. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the same name. You can also check out my website, Shop a Kylock, where you can buy tarot readings from me in many different forms, entirely in PDF though. I do not do face to face readings because I am too nervous and I have absolutely no free time. Heart. I also run the Soothsayers Tea in Twitter. I don't run the Soothsayers Tea Instagram. You do.
I do.
And that is at Soothsayers_Tea. All of this will be in our link tree, which is linked in the description below.
Yes, and I am Kateri with Vinoxus. I do tarot readings at vinoxus.net. You can do written PDFs, which I will tell you are very pretty. And I also do Zoom readings on request if you do message me. Alternatively, if you are local to my area, if you want to see my visage, you can get readings from me at Obscurity Shop. And I
Hmm.
also run the Soothsayers Tea Instagram, so feel free to yell at me on there.
Yeah. And I can also testify that if you do decide to go to what is the shop? What's the shop name
It's
that you do
called
your readings at?
Obscurity Shop.
Oh yeah, Obscurity, that's what it was, yeah. If you do decide to go see Kateri in person, despite the fact they're 68 years old, they are very pretty, and I would recommend them for a reading in person.
Aw, thank you. Actually, I'm
Thank you
88.
very much.
88.
Yeah, oh, my mistake, my mistake. Thank you very much, everybody. We will see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.